folks, the #1 Ravyn Lenae fan from the Infinite Jukebox here with another album review, and today I wanted to talk about the new Ravyn Lenae record, Bird's Eye. In 2022, Ravyn Lenae's Hypnos proved to be one of the best examples of a debut studio album in its given year, and easily one of the best R&B/soul-oriented records of the entirety of 2022. And I can kind of see why so many people were drawn to it. I mean, after multiple years of building up hype for herself, particularly through EPs like 2018's Crush, for example, she swiftly came out of the gate with a full-length listening experience that managed to capture everything successful about her take on silk-smooth neo-soul sounds, and following up a well-executed and largely flawless debut studio album, that would be a hefty task for any artist, especially one with as much buzz and in turn as much to lose as Ravyn Lenae. But Bird's Eye, her sophomore studio album, manages to not really lose any of that traction. It does also feel like a noticeable step down from its predecessor, but nonetheless, it is an album that fails to disappoint as well, thanks to a number of creative differences from the aforementioned Hypnos or any of her previous works, to be completely honest, while at the same time managing to continuously carve its own path throughout a pretty brief runtime. Whereas Hypnos succeeded in a very slickly produced soul lane that's fairly comparable to some of her peers like Ravyn Lenae and Kalela, for example, Bird's Eye takes a turn towards Lenae's more artistically raw sensibilities, and I ultimately think that was a phenomenal decision for her to make in the context of the creation of this record. I really do feel like that was the best possible thing that she could have done, even if, again, I do think that the results are maybe not quite as strong as those that were on Hypnos. And I say that because ultimately the result is an album that comes across like a more open and emotionally unfiltered representation of Lenae as an artist, and while the record, generally speaking, never betrays her soulful roots, there's a much more noticeable live in the studio kind of feel that circulates throughout the track list and provides this very welcome sense of personability throughout the entire listen that I think makes for a very pleasant and extremely engaging record throughout its entire runtime, even on the weaker tracks. Songs like the acoustic forward album closer Days, as well as Love Me Not, are especially benefited by this more stripped back kind of quality that permeates Bird's Eye, with the latter especially providing a unique, interesting, and very Lenae-specific kind of take on a classic R&B soul sort of sound with a deeply catchy kind of composition to boot, a really fantastic degree of hookage on that one. And I mean, even still, there's little reason to expect that this would be anything other than a thoughtfully crafted record. I mean, besides the fact that Lenae has proven herself as an artist in the past, and this is not an album that she's utilizing as a means to demonstrate her talents for the first time ever, there's also a very impressive degree of detail going into this album that never overtakes things and makes things feel overproduced or anything like that. It just comes across like a very meticulously put together album that just so happens to have a lot of more emotionally vulnerable tendencies. With the more one-on-one vibe of the album being set aside, however, there are a lot of low-key details that I feel like go kind of missed maybe upon first listen, from layered vocals to subtly dreamy kind of production choices on tracks like One of One or the Childish Gambino collaboration One Wish. Lenae's vocal work is predictably great here as well, but I don't necessarily think anyone was really going into this record expecting it to be a massive drop-off for her in terms of vocal ability or performance, because, well, frankly, there's just no reason to believe that that was going to happen in any capacity. But her subdued, heartfelt kind of style has never failed her in the past. It doesn't fail her here. That statement remains true throughout the entirety of Bird's Eye, and again, the quasi-DIY nature of Bird's Eye, as well as its subtly high-quality production values, managed to act as a wonderful backing to her naturally excellent vocal abilities. And I think as a whole, the only time that she doesn't really shine on this record as a vocalist is on Dream Girl, which is one song out of a 35-ish minute track list. And honestly, I think the main reason Dream Girl stands out as the weakest here is just because its shortcomings can primarily be attributed to the absolute crime that is allowing Ty Dolla $ign to be anywhere near a recording studio at all. As a whole, though, Ravyn Lenae's latest studio album feels like something fresh, and that's rarely a negative for a blossoming artist such as her. I mean, while her debut may have been the more convincing record overall with its sleek production and fairly uniform sound from track to track, Birds Eye warmly embraces the idea of taking an artist with a gripping personality and interesting ideas and putting her in a setting that is unique to anything that she has done in the past, and ultimately, the results show as something that feels exactly that, unique to anything that she's done in the past. And while some may find that disappointing, and many surely will considering the warm reception of her first full-length LP, it feels hard to knock on Birds Eye for trying something new, especially when it is as consistently successful as it ultimately ends up being. I really don't think there are any particular moments on this record that feel like failed experiments. As a whole, Birds Eye just feels like a genuinely good and fresh Ravyn Lenae record. I'm going to give this record 3.5 stars out of 5. And with that being said, that's the end of this album review. Thank you for watching the Infinite Jukebox, and I'll see you in the next one.